All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me this morning. So, if you got your questions, go ahead and post them on there. We'll start answering them here. All right. So, looks like we don't have any current questions going on. I do have a question from David M. Posted. Looks like this was posted maybe late last night. So, David M. says, "Help! I have been a head case off the tee for over 2 years now, hitting some tee shots that are so far right. I actually nailed 3 houses on the course I was playing. Aside from the embarrassment, that is a product of most likely slicing. Slice again course. First thing you got to do is get that club face closing properly. Pay attention to what's going on at impact. It seems like that's the issue going on here, is that you're just hitting the ball way out to the right. So what I'd recommend is work on getting that club face closed, hitting some balls that really go to the left starting out. And then once you get more comfortable with that, start swinging more. Start trying to get the feeling of swinging more into out. Because right now, what you're likely doing is you're probably swinging over the top, okay? And when you swing over the top and your club path is moving out to in, that's typically going to result in a pull or a slice. And in order for you to hit a good shot, you actually have to have the face open to your club path in order for the ball to start left and to curve back toward the target. Otherwise, if you have your face squared to your club path, you're going to end up hitting a big old pull, which you don't want to do that either. And the more open you have your face to your path, the more it's going to slice. So the first thing you got to do is work on controlling that face, getting that face to where it's closing down. So first, don't worry about your path at all. Just try to get your face close to that path. So what you can do is a couple things. One, I would strengthen your grip. So if you look at your grip here, if I'm looking at strengthening my grip, I'm not talking about holding the grip more tightly. I'm talking about strengthening your grip, which means basically rotating your thumb to where it's on the back part of the grip. So if you see here, this would be more of a weak grip with my thumb right on top of the grip, just like that. To strengthen that, what I would do is, if you watch my left thumb, I would turn my hand to where it's on the more back portion or the more of the side of the grip there. And what that allows me to do is it makes it a lot easier at contact. So I make sure I try to keep that to where the face is kind of pointing down toward the ground throughout the swing. And then the downswing, I do that even more. I try to feel like that face is pointing down toward the ground. It's going to feel like you're going to hit it a mile to the left. And that's fine. That's what we're trying to do here. So we're feeling like we're getting that club face hooded toward the ground as you're coming through. The second piece is when you are coming through contact, I'd be trying to feel like you're hitting the outside part of the golf ball. So if we're looking down at the golf ball, so this is me looking down at address from the golf ball here. I'm trying to hit this part, this club face. Sorry, it's a little bit hard to see here. There we go. This club face has to be really closed, right? I mean, that's super. That's 90 degrees closed. This would be the back of the golf ball, square. So to hit that part of the golf ball, the club face has to be closed. So that's another piece that I would recommend thinking about. And then the last piece I would try to do is when you're coming through here, you're feeling like you're hooding the face down. When you're going through contact, I feel like your trail hand is coming down and staying pointed down toward the ground. So in order to do that, that club face is going to have to be closed. So if you watch as I'm coming through here, if I come through with my hand, my trail hand pointed down toward the ground, look where that club face is. It's really rolled over, and that club face is pointing down to the ground. So that's going to help you get that club face really close to your path. For some reason, it's very zoomed. But if you look here, if I'm coming in, this is a 0 club path. And then if I go this way, right, if I keep my feet this direction, now this is a 9 degrees into out club path. So I'd actually do some swings where you're opening up and swinging along basically a line perpendicular to your target. That's going to help you get the feeling of swinging extreme into out. And then put those two pieces together where you're swinging extreme into out and you're getting that club face to close, and start hitting some really big to exaggerate the opposite. So the opposite of a slice to the right would be a snap hook to the left. So get to where you can hit snap hooks. And then once you're able to do that, then all you have to do is ease off of that feeling to get the desired result that you want, to straighten it out. So that's what I'd recommend doing. If you want help from an instructor, we do offer unlimited swing reviews. I can take a look at your swing and tell you exactly, walk you through exactly what you need to do. I'm actually doing that right now with some current students. I got a couple new students came to me, both slicers. We're trying to fix that first and foremost. So, it's a little bit of a process, but once you get it down, you'll stop slicing for life. And if you actually start slicing again, you'll know what you need to do to fix it, because it's going to be the same issue. It's just something that creeped back into your swing again. But usually once you start hitting it straight, you don't go back. You stay with what you're doing. All right. So Melvin R says, what bad things happen when the head rises in the backswing? So that's a good question. So basically, when you rise up in the backswing, you just have to lower more in the downswing, and it makes it more difficult to be consistent. So if you look at pretty much every tour player, actually, if you look at any tour player, I challenge you to find me a tour player that raises their head up in the backswing. I think Kenny Perry does a little bit, but I thought I checked that. Maybe he didn't. But for someone told me that Kenny Perry did. But basically, if you look from face on, you draw a line on the top of a tour player's head. What you'll typically see is that they won't raise above that line at any point during the swing, during the backswing or the downswing. Now, they do raise above that line when they get into that full finish, and they're typically getting below that line. In the beginning of the downswing, they're getting even further below that line. And then about right here, when their hands get to about right here, when they get past waist level, that's when the head will just stay still and maybe move back or just barely hop up just a little bit, but they'll never raise above that line. And the reason is it's just hard to be consistent. So imagine if your tour player is getting 4 to 6 inches lower than where they were at address, somewhere in that area. So they're getting about 2 inches, 1 to 3 inches lower in the backswing, and then another 1 to 3 inches lower in the downswing. So if you're someone who's raising up in the backswing, you have to go down a long way. You have to really dip down in the downswing to get to where you need to go. And it's going to be really difficult to be consistent to make that happen. Typically what happens, and basically it doesn't happen. I've never seen anyone be able to get good forward shaft lean when they're raising. See, is they'll kind of stand up, and then raising up, you're basically only coming down to where level is. So you got to make sure that you are getting lower or at least staying level in the backswing. Otherwise, you're going to end up probably flipping the club, having an early release. Because if you are standing up, if your hands are higher, then you have to flip the club to get the club to the golf ball. Otherwise, if you have forward shaft lean and if your hands are lower, then you have to get forward shaft lean because there's no room for the club. Otherwise, you'll stick it in the ground way behind the golf ball if you flip and you have your hands really, really low. So in order to get to where you're lowering in the backswing, you got to make sure that you have some side bend here and you're not pushing your backside off of the line. So if you imagine your backside is up against a wall here, when you're going up, you can't push off of that wall. You got to make sure that you're rotating and pushing your hip back and you're getting into this side bend as you're going up to the top. If you're getting to where you're level up at the top with your shoulders, that's going to be bad for a couple of reasons. One, again, it's going to be harder to come down. And two, you're flattening out your swing. And that's going to usually result in over the top, or it's going to result in not, having a very flat swing to where you can't create a lot of space to be able to accelerate the club. The steeper your shoulders are, the more you're in your shoulder plane here, the easier it's going to be to get your hands up high so that you can create more space and time to accelerate the club. So there's all kinds of reasons. Obviously, if you have back issues, that could be a problem. If you have lower back pain, it could be an issue that's not allowing you to kind of maintain that. Obviously, you can only do what you're physically capable of. Excuse me, but just do the best you can. But obviously, there are some issues that come from not staying in your posture as you're going up to the top. So go ahead and keep posting your questions on there. And I'll get them answered on here. It's like all the other questions are from earlier. Oh, okay, so Melvin R had another follow-up question, looks like. So you should not be extending until after impact. It seems this would lead to club head into the ground, particularly if the hands are low. So it doesn't if you have forward shaft lean. It doesn't. So your hand, you're actually shouldn't. You won't see typically a tour player. That's a piece of the Tatsuki golf system where the club is splitting the forearms. That's the straight line release after contact where the club's splitting the forearm. So if I choke up on this club, you can see where that club, the grip is kind of splitting my 4 degrees out in front of impact. But if you were to draw a line between the shaft and the ground, that'd be about 40 feet there. Go look on video. You can see exactly what I'm talking about. Download V1 Golf. Look at model swings on there, tour players. That's exactly what you're going to see. You're going to see somewhere between that straight line release position and the hands in front of the chest position and the follow through. That's when they'll actually start to come back up. Now, the reason why, if your hands are that low, why you won't stick the club into the ground is because you're going to have forward shaft lean. So if you look, if I don't have forward shaft lean, I'm like this. If my hands are lower, I'm down into the ground. Whereas if I have forward shaft lean and my hands are lower, look, my club is not digging into the ground way before the golf ball is digging into the ground at and after the golf ball. If I'm releasing that club early, then it will dig into the ground. So it's all about how you release the club. If you release the club properly, then you'll be getting forward shaft lean. So Michael G says, when ratio of flight in roll? My 58 and 54 degree, just depending on the shot. If I'm a green and I need a lot of spin, I'll be using my 58 degree because that's going to give me the most spin. And if I'm probably a little bit further out, then I like to use my 54 degree because it's a little bit easier to control and I have enough speed with that. But yeah, those are pretty much the 2 clubs I pitch with. Some people pitch with 1 club. Some people will do all their pitches with a 60. I think that's pretty much what Clay does. He does all his pitches with about a 60 degree wedge. But typically I actually find that my chips or my pitches that are further away, I actually pitch better with my 54 degree. So it's really personal preference. But with a pitch shot, what you're doing is you are carrying the ball most of the way to the hole and you are stopping it with spin. There's not going to be a lot of rollout there. I think you're thinking of more of a chip shot. In that situation, typically with a pitch shot, you are carrying it almost all the way to the hole, and it's stopping. It's got spin, and you're stopping it with spin. So that's typically what's going on there. But like I said, you can do that with a 54 degree or 60 degree, 56 degree. You can switch it up. My personal preference is, a 58 degree around the greens when I really need to stop it. And get some extra spin on there because there's not a lot of speed. And then, when I get further away from the green, so 30 yards plus, I would say, maybe even 40 yards plus, it really just, it's kind of just, I kind of just play it by ear. That the little less loft on there, I can drive it a little bit lower and I still get some pretty good spin on it. And it's a little bit easier for me to control. Now, I might not get as much spin as I would with my 58, but I get enough spin to where it basically hops and stops pretty quickly. So great question, Michael. But yeah, it's really personal preference. I would go out and just practice. If you get really comfortable with your 58 degree or 60 degree, or you're, with a certain wedge and you're comfortable from using that from everywhere, then do that. But if you're in a situation like me where I'm more comfortable with my 58 getting more spin around the greens when I'm closer to the green, and then more comfortable with my 54 away from the green, that's completely fine too. It's really just personal preference. And if you want to use all kinds of clubs, you could go down and use a 52 degree or 50 degree from further away shots if you want. It's really just personal preference. There's no right or wrong way to do it. The right way is essentially the way that gives you the best results. So you just got to play around with it, find what works the best for you. But there's no universal truth of how you should be doing that. It's really just personal preference. All right, so keep on posting your questions on here, and we'll get them answered for you. But like I said, So James H says, what could cause me to hook my hybrids every time, but not the longer clubs? So it could be, usually with not other long clubs. So basically, maybe your hybrid set up a little bit differently. That maybe has a different shaft. Maybe it's just the feel and look of it makes you subconsciously feel like you need to close the face up more. So basically what causes a hook is the ball needs, there's one of two things or a combination of these two things. Either the face is close to the path and or you're striking it on the toe. So it could be maybe the setup is that you just always strike it on the toe with your hybrid. And it could be that you always just roll the face over too much. So what I recommend doing if you're always hooking that hybrid is you're going to need to feel like you're hitting a fade when you're doing that. So feel like you're leaving the face open to the pass. So that would be the first thing I would do, is I feel like you're leaving that face open as you're coming through contact. So to do that, maybe take a little bit weaker of a grip. You can do that. So what I mean by that is if you have a fairly strong grip, which would mean the golfer would be overdoing it, right? So you just ease off of that feeling a little bit. Also, the feeling of hitting the inside part of the golf ball. So if I'm looking down at the golf ball, I talked basically the opposite of what I was talking about before for closing the face. If I'm looking down at the golf ball, here's me looking down at the golf ball at address. I'm in my stance here. This would be the back of the golf ball. I'm trying to feel like I'm hitting the inside part of the golf ball, because in order to do that, my club face would have to be really, really open to make that happen. So that'd be the first thing I would do. Most likely your club path is the same. You're probably just either hitting it on the toe and or closing the face too much. That's most likely what's going on. Your club path's not likely going to differ between a hybrid and other long clubs. It's probably going to be the same if you're trying to swing it the same. What's likely going on is ball in the face. If you're hitting it on the toe, that could be the reason of what's going on there. So if you're hitting on the toe, the best way to fix that is to exaggerate the opposite, which would be hitting it on the heel. Line up to the ball as you normally would and intentionally try to strike it on the heel. So if you normally line it up in the center of the face, line it up in the center of the face, and then try to strike it out here on the heel. What will most likely happen is you'll probably move that strike closer to the center. Now, if it's still in the toe, then you need to exaggerate that feeling even more, especially if this is the first time that you've done this, where you've tried to basically hit a poor shot in order to hit a good shot. It's not an easy thing to do. It's probably out of your comfort zone a little bit. So it may take you a couple tries to get it, but you may just need to exaggerate even more. You may even need to feel like you're hitting it off the hosel over here, or maybe even swinging, if my fist is the golf ball, swinging, over the top of the golf ball in order to actually make it happen. Once you get that, then you'll be in good shape. You have to keep on doing that until it's actually a reality. Now, if you try to strike it in the toe and you actually strike it in the toe, then that means that you just overdid it a little bit. So doing what you're intending to do, then you're essentially calibrated and you can go back to feeling like, trying to hit it in the center of the face and then hitting it in the center of the face. But until then, you have to keep doing it. In fact, I got a buddy that struggles hitting it on the toe all the time. And I told him, like, hey, try to hit that off the heel. And they hit one and he boomed it right down the middle, center face contact. Perfect. Went to the next hole. He hit one, boom, right off the toe, snap hook into the woods. So I asked him, I was like, hey, did you try to hit that one off the heel? And he said, oh, no. And he just tried to hit it off the center of the face. You have to keep doing that until you actually start hitting off the toe, until it becomes a reality. So that's what you got to do. But I'd try those two things. Number one, I would try to get that club face opening, holding up that face as you're going through contact. So feeling like you're going through contact with the face wide open instead of closing the face or squaring it up. Feel like it's going wide open. Feel like your hands aren't rolling over at all. That'll help you to get that face open through contact. If you hit a big old slice, just ease off of the feeling a little bit. The feeling of hitting the inside of the golf ball. Again, that's going to help you to open the face. Again, if you overdo it, maybe instead of feeling like hitting the inside part of the golf ball, maybe you feel like you're hitting this part of the golf ball. So that would be the very back. This would be the 90 degrees to that. Maybe 45 degrees to the side would be a better feeling to make that happen. feeling like your palm is pointing toward the sky as you're coming through contact. Weakening your grip can help a little bit. So I would try those things to get your face more open, to see what's going on there. And you'll also want to check your strike location to see if it's a toe strike. And just to go over what I didn't go over exactly why that would be an issue. So if you strike it on the toe, what happens is something called gear effect. Basically, if you hit it anywhere off the center of the club face, something called gear effect happens. So the easiest way to think about gear effect, or to understand exactly how it works, is that the ball is always going to want to roll toward the center of the club face, and that's the kind of spin that's going to put on it. So if I hit a ball on the toe, the ball is going to compress against the face a little bit. the face is, or the club is actually going to twist open a little bit. So the ball will actually start a little bit more to the right than it normally would if it's a center strike. And then what happens is that ball, if I'm on the toe, it'll actually roll when it compresses on the face. I mean, it's a split second, right? It's rolling toward the center of the face, and that puts this draw spin on there. Same thing happens if you hit it in the heel. If you hit it in the heel, the face will twist shut a little bit. It'll close, and then the ball will roll toward the center of the face, it will make the ball start a little bit more to the left, and then it will curve to the right. So you can actually hit a ball with an over-the-top swing, right? You can actually hit the ball with a slice swing, but if you hit it on the toe, it'll go straight. Now, it won't go anywhere because you hit it with a glancing blow and also a very off-center strike, but it may go straight. So it might give you the illusion that you hit a good shot, but then you realize, wow, why didn't that go anywhere? And that's why, because you hit it with a glancing blow and with a toe strike. That's horizontal gearing. There's also vertical gearing. So if you hit it in the low part of the club face, the face will actually twist closed a little bit, and then the ball will crawl up the face toward the center, and that will make the ball start lower and then have more spin. If you hit a drive thin, where if you hit your driver where you hit it low on the face, you probably noticed how that ball started out really low, and then it made had like a rise ball effect on it. That's because you struck it low on the face. It started out lower. There's also less loft on the lower part of the face, because driver club faces are domed. So if you have this driver here is a 9-degree driver, that 9 degrees is from the center of the club part of the club face, could be 12 degrees. So if I hit it low on the club face, that's going to be much lower loft. It's going to launch a lot lower. It's going to have more spin. That's very bad for distance. You don't want to be hitting the driver there. So then you have the vertical gearing on the top of the face. What will happen is the face will actually go this way. It will add loft a little bit. So it will give you can't get top spin on a drive, but what it does is it reduces the amount of backspin that you would normally have. So it kind of crawls down the middle of the face, and then it reduces the amount of backspin, which is good for distance. So a lot of times hitting it higher on the club face can give you a little bit more distance because it gives you a little bit higher launch and lower spin. Just kind of a fun fact there. Hitting in the center of the club face is always a great idea, but the best place to actually hit it on the club face for distance-wise is to hit it a little bit higher on the face and actually toward the toe, which, since we don't have any questions, I'll kind of go into that discussion. And if you got a question, go ahead and post it on there. Otherwise, you're going to have to listen to me ramble about what I want to talk about, or not hear me talk at all. But if you hit it toward the toe a little bit, you may actually get a little bit more club head speed because the toe is moving faster than the heel. So imagine this club head is moving. The club head is moving 100 miles per hour. That's measured from the very center of the club head. So if that's moving 100 miles per hour, the heel here, the toe, could be moving at 107 miles per hour, and this is the edge of the toe. And then this part of the club face could be moving about 93 miles per hour. So if you hit it a little bit more toward the toe, depending on your club head speed, you may get a mile per hour or two extra of club head speed. Now, you don't want to go too far off the toe because then you're going to get that off-center strike. You're going to get that gear effect. And you're not going to be able to transfer as much energy to the golf ball. So typically about a half inch toward the toe, a quarter inch high on the face, somewhere in that area, that's going to actually be the best place to hit it to get the most efficient and to get the most out. So David W says, should your head be behind the ball at contact on all shots? Is even with the ball okay? With the ball okay? So it really depends on the shot. So with your irons, for anything off the turf, your nose is basically going to be pretty much straight down on it or slightly behind it. With the driver, you're definitely going to be behind it because the ball is more forward in your stance. There's actually a video in the stable fluid spine section where Clay talks about the nose behind the ball drill. So typically you're putting a stick on the ground, you're coming into contact, you're putting a stick on the ground right in between your legs. So straddling that stick. So if I put a club on the ground to kind of replicate what that would look like. So there we go. We got a club on the ground. Let's line that up more with the camera. There we go. So if I'm straddling this, all right, my ball is going to be somewhere, in this area, slightly ahead of the middle of my stance, right? And hopefully you can kind of see that. There we go. So we can see that I'm going up and I'm coming down into contact. My nose is pretty much right down on that stick, very, very slightly behind the golf ball. And then from there, I come all the way up into the full finish. Now with the driver, my ball is more straight down from my lead armpit, right? So straight down from that area, and I usually have a little bit wider of a stance. So straight down there, if I'm coming into contact, my nose is basically down in that same place, right down on that stick, but I'm way behind the golf ball here. So basically, your nose at contact is roughly going to be straight down the center of your feet. That's typically where it's going to be, and you'll work on that in the stable fluid spine course and the nose behind the ball drill, which is basically what I kind of demonstrated right there. All right, it reaches a low point and then moves back up. So if your head is too far back behind the golf ball or behind the center of your stance, what's going to end up happening is that low point is going to happen well before that, and the club's either going to hit the ground and you're going to chunk it, or you're going to miss the ground and it may be coming up into the golf ball and you may thin it, or it may miss the ground coming up into the golf ball and you may top it. So that's an issue there. And if your nose is too far forward, you're kind of like this, then that's going to promote kind of an over the top kind of chopping down into the golf ball, which isn't going to be good for your contact, especially with a driver, because you want to be hitting up on the golf ball for maximum distance. You want to be hitting up on that. So if you're kind of leaning forward, your nose is forward, that's going to move your low point forward, and that's going to promote a more chopping down angle of attack, even probably an over the top, so that you don't chunk it. That's probably what's going to end up in that, exactly what it's called. But that's the drill from the stable fluid spine course. To get to that course is very easy. If you go to the top of the page, you click that house icon. That will take you to the home page. If you scroll down the home page, you'll see all the courses that we have. And if you'll probably see that stable fluid spine course toward the top. All right, so go ahead and get your questions posted on there. We got, and we'll get them. Just going to get a refill here. All right, so Dan M has a question, so we'll go ahead and get that answered here. All right, so Dan M says, can you discuss the effects of using a stiff shaft versus a shaft that's a little too much flex? So basically, what can happen is a couple things. Oops, let me get my door shut here. So if it can be hard, the timing of it's going to be different because the face is going to be closing or opening a little different way. And also, you're going to have something called forward deflection. So basically, when you come into contact, if you have a shaft that's way too whippy, that's basically forward deflecting too soon, you can lose a little bit of club head speed. And then you can also have that club face too far close. Because basically, as you're coming into contact, the shaft's actually bowing kind of, if we do it right here, it's kind of bowing like that. So what we want is that shaft to be relatively, you're not going to get it to where it's perfectly, straight or even lagging behind the ball. you're always going to, I think, have some, and you can. I could be wrong about this. I'm not a shaft expert or anything like that, but typically you're always going to have some forward deflection. But reducing that makes it easier to square the face, and it also can give you a little bit more club head speed. So going in and getting professionally fitted can help you to have that. Now, unless you have a really huge, like unless you're swinging 120 miles per hour and you're using, notice that big of a difference between, like right now, I play an extra stiff shaft. If I played a stiff shaft, I probably wouldn't notice that huge of a difference. I would just need to make an adjustment. And one thing to understand as well is that not all really just depends, and not all shaft flexes within a company. They may have a model of shaft where the regular flex is stiffer than the extra stiff of another model that they have. So there's no standard for how flexy or stiff a shaft should be. So the best way to get fitted for a shaft is really just to go get professionally fitted. Don't guess on it. If you want to make sure that you have had a distance clinic, Robin was out there hitting some of the guys' drivers that, the one guy came, he had like a company. They make really, really light clubs. So it was a very light head. And then it was a shaft that was also very light. I believe it's like a 36-gram shaft. Typically, your senior flexes are going to be somewhere in the 50s. Regular flex is going to be somewhere in the 60s. X-stiff, 60, 70 grams. So it's very, very light. And he was hitting it, but he was hooking all of them. So just kind of snap hooking all of them. And he actually found that the harder he swung, he got about the same amount of club head speed. So he was putting more effort into it, but he was getting more club head speed. But when he swung nice and easy, he got the same amount of club head speed as when he was swinging all out effort. And if he was hitting driver, there would definitely be a difference because he plays an X-stiff shaft. But with this shaft, because it was forward deflecting so much, he was losing distance. Now, I'd be interested to see, and we may try this when we go to the demo show or the PGA show. Go to these XTO both. I don't know a lot about their brand. Again, I'm not a club expert by any means. I'm not a club junkie or anything like that. I've always believed that it's way more about what you do with the equipment than the equipment itself. For example, Dustin Johnson could probably take your clubs or anybody's, even though they're senior flex or whatever, and he'll adapt his swing to be able to shoot a 65, pretty easily. So I don't put that much merit. You're going to adapt to your equipment for the most part. So let's say that Robin didn't have any other choice and he had to play that shaft where, the kick point was happening way too soon and he was getting a lot of forward deflection when he was giving a lot of effort. He would adapt, right? He would swing in a way that would allow him to hit that ball straight and swing in a way he may need to feel like he's holding the face open more as he's going through contact. You're going to adapt to your equipment. You're not just going to keep hitting the same bad shot over and over. If you see that you're going to start slicing it, you're going to try and fix the slice. It's not the equipment's fault that you're slicing. It's really your swing. So that's what I get into. But anyway, it can make a difference. So I would just recommend going and getting professionally fitted if you want to be confident that you have the right shaft. Because basically when you go and get fitted, they should put you in a shaft that's the right weight for you, the right length that you have to get professionally fitted. You're not just going to be able to guess and causing you to lose a little bit of distance versus if you had a stiffer shaft. And also maybe closing that face down in your case as well. An answer. Like I said, we got about 20 minutes or so left. Let's go ahead and post your questions on here. I can't stay after today, so if you got questions, make sure you're posting them as soon as possible because once that I have to get going. Again, I'm sorry I've had to go. I haven't been able to stay later. Everybody, seems like we get backloaded with the questions. So if you got questions, make sure you're asking them now and not waiting until the last second because if you do, you may not get your question answered. And it's possible you won't get an answer tomorrow either if there are questions being asked. So go ahead and post your questions on here if you want to get them answered. In the meantime, I will check my email here. If you're just joining us, excuse me, I'm just waiting for a question to be asked. So go ahead and post your questions on there. Measure swing speed by radar or calculate it by algorithm if ball speed. So it calculates, doesn't get it, meaning if it misses it, if there's an error, it won't show you an error. It will calculate it by an algorithm. Now, I don't know that. I haven't heard that from SE200 or Swing Caddy themselves, but that's what I believe that they're doing, because there's never an error. There's never an error. It's always it always gets something, and even $20,000 machines like Flight Scopes and TrackMans and GC Quads, they don't always pick it up, and I find it hard to believe that the $300 device gets it every single time, but the $20,000 plus devices have errors every now and then. So I believe it does. So the only time here, if it doesn't show you anything, that means that it didn't get the ball. And if it shows you, if you get like a kind of a weird number where it just doesn't seem right with the club head speed, most likely it got your ball speed and it tried to kind of do within an algorithm of itself based on maybe what your past club head speeds have been or what your past smash factors have been. It may calculate what your club head speed is based off of that. So the club head is actually one of the most difficult things to catch as far as radar is. And the reason is because it's not a uniform shape. And a lot of times, especially these newer drivers that have slots in them, they have like the TaylorMade drivers, they have the slots for the sliding weights. The Ping driver has the kind of the slot all the way around the back of it for moving around the weight. So when you have those things on it, it's hard for the radar to lock onto it. So sometimes it misses it. But a golf ball, it's moving faster, so it's easier to catch. And then two, it's a uniform shape. It's easy for that radar to lock onto it. So you can, if it gives you a number, that ball speed, it's pretty much going to be spot on accurate every single time. In fact, the ball speed is the most accurate thing typically recorded on any launch, any sort of launch monitor. It's typically the most accurate thing because it's the easiest thing. So, that compared to TrackMan, Flight Scope, any of those, it's right on pretty much every single time. Every now and then it's like 1 mile per hour off. Whereas club head speed, because it misses it sometimes, I believe this is not a quote from them. This is just what I believe. I believe that it does miss it sometimes, and it'll give you it'll kind of spit out a number at you, basically. So what I recommend is actually something called the Swing Speed Radar. That's my favorite one. So there's good parts about it. One, it's lower price. It's like $100 on Amazon. And I'm not affiliated with Swing Speed Radar at all. We do have an affiliate deal with Swing Caddy, so we do get a little bit of a kickback if you follow our affiliate link and buy it from there. I do believe it's the most accurate device, and that it's the most portable. I believe that it has some cool games on it. I like that it tells you what's going on, but it's not a perfect device. Just like Flight Scopes and TrackMans, they're not perfect either. But I think people expect them to be I think people think that TrackMans and Flight Scopes and GC Quads are perfect. They never have misreadings. They absolutely do all the time. So we can't really expect these $300 devices to do it. But anyway, the Swing Speed Radar, a couple more reasons why I like that. One, it's only showing you club head speed. So when you're doing speed training, I think that is actually a benefit because it is that's the focus of what we're doing. So when you're doing speed training, your focus is on getting more club head speed. And it's not, I think people pay attention to the smash factor and the distance and all that a little bit too much. When you're speed training, the thing that you're trying to improve is your speed. And when you improve that, as you get more comfortable swinging faster, the rest of it is going to continue to go up. So I recommend getting the Swing Speed Radar. It's not as accurate, every now and then. It's going to be 2 to 3 miles per hour off. But I mean, come on, that's not very much, really. Usually it's pretty much right on compared to the Swing Caddy, or not with the Swing Caddy, and then also with Flight Scope, TrackMan, GC Quad, so on and so forth. So that's what I recommend. It's also very portable. It's easy to use. It can take a beating. It's less expensive. It's more focused on what we're trying to do. So that's what I recommend. It also holds up in the sun a little bit better. So part of the reason why, so we used to use the Swing Speed Radars in our clinics, the SC200s in our clinics initially, but we had to stop for a couple of reasons. One, it's just like if you left your cell phone out in the sun, it's going to start acting funny. The Swing Caddy 2s did the same thing. So they give some kind of crazy numbers every now and then when it got really hot and they were starting to get baked. And then also people were getting obsessed with the smash factor and the ball speed and things like that. And that is not the focus of what you're doing when you are speed training. So we switched to the Swing Speed Radars because, one, they hold up better in the sun, and two, it keeps you focused on that one thing that we're working on, which is club head speed. So and then Bruce, and I'll answer your question, Sam. I just wanted to follow up with Bruce's. So Bruce said, okay, but I'm using limited flight balls. My smash factor shows high 1.4. Yeah, so that's what's going to happen. If you're using balls that are limited flight, that means they're not going to be as efficient when you strike them. So if you're getting 1.4, that's probably pretty good with limited flight balls. I know that our balls at our range here, they're not necessarily limited flight, but they're not like a high quality golf ball like a Pro V1 or something like that. Typically, the highest I can get is a 1.45 with our range here. So that's why I said when you are doing speed training, focus on the club head speed. That's the most important thing. As it becomes kind of your new normal, you're going through the neural adaptation phase, but the speeds reported will be relative to any event. In any event, so are useful. Yeah. So the speeds, like I said, if you're getting a weird smash factor, it's probably getting, if you're getting 1.4, it's probably getting the club head. But I just noticed sometimes it will give me kind of a weird, I'll feel like I pured it and it won't tell me. And it could just be the range ball too. It might be the range ball. Recommend using the Swing Speed Radar. That's just my recommendation. I've always been told to keep my left wrist flat during my backswing. However, in order for me to get the club near parallel at the top of my swing, I find that can help you to get more speed, but you're basically, I need to come into contact with a wrist angle that's about like that, that's pretty flat. If I'm like this at the top, I've got a lot of manipulation. Obviously, hits the ball fantastic. So as long as you're coming down into contact, shallowed out nicely in the downswing, that club face is squaring up, you have gate compression and everything at contact, then I wouldn't worry about it. I'd only work on things that are going to improve what's happening at impact. So if your impact is great, then working on cupping or getting that wrist flat at the top, it's not going to do. But if you're having trouble getting that club face closed, if you're coming down steep, so meaning if in the downswing you see the shaft is kind of in this steep position, and that's maybe from coming very, very nicely. If you're in that situation, then great. If not, then you probably need to work on getting this wrist to be more flat at the top or even a little bit bowed, shallowing that club out, squaring that club face earlier in the downswing, getting that club face nice and square and with some good compression at impact. And that's going to be the move course. The move course is really, really going to be good for that. The move course is all about shallowing out the club in transition and getting that club face to square earlier. So that's basically reversing the effect of that cupped wrist. To work on that, to go to that course and work through those drills is very, very easy to get to. And this is how you get to any course on the website. We try to make it really easy for you. If you click the house icon, that's always going to take you to the home page. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll see it says Top Speed Golf System Course Progress or something like that. But you'll see all the courses. There's 20-some courses on the website. The Move course is the one that you're wanting. It's probably going to be a third of the way down. A memory serves me. It's going to be somewhere in that area. With the Move, like I said, it's going to be all about getting that club to shallow out, getting that club face squaring earlier so that you can hit more compressed shots. But yeah, it's just something you're going to have to look at your swing and what's going on there. But like I said, a really, really important lesson for everyone is you only want to – everything that you change in your technique, it has to be to improve what's going on at contact. If your goals are to hit the ball better, right? If your goals are to hit the ball better and play better golf, then everything that you do with your technique, it needs to be to improve what's going on at contact. If not, then you're just fixing it for aesthetic purposes. If your goal is not necessarily to play better golf, but just to have an aesthetically pleasing swing, then the goal is just to change whatever the movement is at any cost. But if your goal is to play better golf, everything that you change with your technique, it has to be to improve on what's going on at contact. And there's 5 things, plus we'll throw the Move in there as well. There's 5 things that are always going to be things that improve what's going on at contact. They're going to put you in a better position. And that's the pieces of the Top Speed Golf system. So we talk about our stable fluid spine. We talk about our great shoulder turn. We talk about lag. We talk about compression line. We talk about the release of the club. These are the things that help you the most as far as changing your technique. And like I said, we'll throw the Move in there as well. Those are the things that help the most as far as technique is concerned. And those are the things that every single tour player is doing. So Bruce F. Goes on to say, actually, I get 1.48, 1.49, but this makes no sense since reported carry is 20 yards less than I hit in competition. Weird, no response required. So one thing I will say is that the carry distance that it's telling you, or the whatever the overall roll distance, I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly what it tells you. I think it might be carry distance, but this is just it's an algorithm, right? It's not meant to be 100% accurate. It really depends on how you hit the golf ball. So if you hit the golf ball and really flip the club, add a lot of loft, you're not going to hit it as far. Whereas if you really compress the ball, maybe hit the ball a little bit higher on the face, get a high launch, low spin, it may go a little bit further. And oftentimes I will say that, and there's been studies on this, that people think that they hit the ball further than what they actually do. In fact, I had some people at the clinic where I asked them, how far do you typically carry the ball? And they tell me that they're carrying the ball 260. Well, in order for that to be even mathematically or physically possible, you would have to be swinging somewhere in probably around 105, 110. And this person had a 95 mile per hour club head speed. So they might be hitting their driver overall 260 or something like that if they really caught one and it was hard outside, but they ain't carrying it that far unless there's a 40 mile per hour wind, behind them pushing the ball. So, a lot of people think that they're carrying the ball. I'm not saying that that's you, Bruce. I'm just saying that keep in mind that that may not actually be the reality of what's going on there. I've actually found that the swing caddy too is actually very generous in how far it's saying that you're hitting it. And I'm guessing they want you to think that you're hitting it really far with the machine. So I'm guessing that's why it's a little bit more generous. But that's typically what I see. All right. So if you have we got like 2 minutes left. So if you have a last minute question, go ahead and post it on here. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow Tomorrow's Thursday, so it'll be 3 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah, we'll answer your questions at that time, but halfway through the week here. We got a couple last second questions here, comments. So Bruce F says, I measure and record all shots in course, quite conscious of the tendency. Stable. I have used 2 devices, cell phone, using cell service and cable service. Both are buffering. As far as I know, it's fine. I haven't got any other complaints from anybody. I'm guessing it may be your device, but usually works pretty fine. It's not perfect all the time for sure. I am at home, so there can also be some issues. This is live, so sometimes there can be some issues. But as far as I can tell, every now and then it'll tell me that it's unstable, but it wasn't telling me that today. So I'm guessing it could be your device or a combination. Convenience. Hopefully, next time it will work better. But all right, so thanks everybody for joining me right at 10 a.m. right now. I do have to get going. So Bruce says same thing. All right, so it wasn't telling me that there was any connection issues today, so not sure what the deal is. But yeah, if you guys are seeing connection issues, be sure to let me know. Now it is telling me that connection's unstable. I don't know why it's doing that, but I apologize for the inconvenience. So it tends to work fine usually, but anyway, thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.